This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, there's a good chance you first found out about us through our song analysis videos like the ones about Comfortably Numb or Africa. Those videos are a lot of fun to make and they can get pretty complicated, but my goal with them isn't just to show off how smart I am. Or at least that's not my only goal. I'm also trying to show how song analysis works, or at least how I like to do it, because really, it's not that hard. So today I thought I'd pull back the curtain and talk a bit about my process so you can apply it to whatever songs you want instead of waiting for me to get around to them. Let's start with the obvious stuff. We'll call these Step 0. The first thing you need is a song to analyze. It can be any song you want, but you're gonna be listening to it a lot over the course of this journey, so I'd recommend picking one you actually enjoy. Speaking of journeys, for this video I'll be looking at Don't Stop Believin'. The other thing you'll need is an accurate transcription. You can't explain what they're doing unless you know what they're doing. You can work this out yourself if your ears are good enough, but to save time I usually just Google it. It's worth keeping in mind though that most online transcriptions are wrong, so to double check it, I like to play the written notes along with the original track and listen for areas where it doesn't sound right. For Don't Stop Believin' though, this part is fairly simple. We'll stick to the verse, which just loops these 4 chords forever. Once you're confident in your transcription, we can start the actual analysis. I like to focus on chords and harmony for a couple reasons. First, I think they're the most overlooked aspect of composition. Everyone can tell you how meaningful the lyrics to their favorite songs are, and a lot of them can pinpoint cool or important parts of the melodic phrase and the rhythm section even if they don't have the precise words to explain it, but unless you have a theory background, it's likely you've never really thought about how the chords help tell the story of the song. The other reason I focus on harmony is just because I think it's more fun than melodic analysis. That's a personal preference though. Melodies are super important too, and if you want to focus on them instead, that's totally fine. Either way, the first real step is to find the key. This is the central point from which the rest of the song grows, so if you start with the wrong root, you're going to wind up with a completely different and probably not very coherent analysis. For example, I think the biggest mistake I've published so far is probably from the Hurt video where I analyzed the pre-chorus in A instead of D. I still think my analysis is valid, but is it the best explanation for what's happening? Probably not, and it's all because I got the key wrong. Now, it's true that not all songs actually have a key, but I tend to focus on popular music, so while there's no guarantee, it's a pretty safe bet. If you know what you're looking for, you can probably find that key just by reading your transcription, but I don't tend to trust those. There's no replacement for actually listening to the song, so put on some headphones and try to figure out which sections feel the most resolved. The melody can be a huge help here. It's the most prominent part of the song, so if something feels like the root there, it probably is. For instance, if we listen to Don't Stop Believin', the line "Midnight Train Goin' Anywhere" sounds like it ends with a big ol' resolution, and we can check our transcription and see that those last couple notes are F sharp, G sharp, and E, which means we're probably in the key of E major. Don't worry if your key doesn't make sense on paper yet. The job of a theorist is to describe what we hear. We'll make it make sense later. Once you have your root, we can do some quick Roman numeral analysis. This is just taking the chords and marking out where they fall in the key, so in Don't Stop Believing, we start on the 1 chord, go to the 5, then 6 minor, then finally 4. This lets us abstract away the specific key the song was recorded in and helps tease out the underlying structures of the harmony, and if you've taken an intro-level theory course, this is probably where you stopped. Your teacher hands you a progression, tells you to analyze it, you put in the Roman numerals, and bam, you're done. But here's the thing. This isn't analysis. This is labeling. We've got the what nailed down, but the point of analysis is to get us to the why. In order to actually analyze structure, though, we need to pick a harmonic model. That is, we need to decide which set of rules we're going to assume the music was written with. This isn't meant to be restrictive. If our model can't explain something, we can just switch to a different one, but there's lots of different approaches to music, and we've got to start somewhere. We've covered lots of different harmonic models in the past, and which one you start with is kind of arbitrary, but my first instinct is usually functional harmony, because for a lot of popular music, it works really well. We've talked about functional harmony many times before, but it's basically just the idea that different chords in a key have different predefined functions or jobs to do. We made a whole video on it if you want to know more. We can go through all our Roman numerals and assign functions to them, so the 1 chord has tonic function, the 5 chord is dominant, the 6 minor is tonic again, and the 4 chord is subdominant, but at this point we've fallen back into the labeling trap. We've put new names on the chords, but in order to really get at what's happening, we need to ask why those functions are in the order they're in. We're looking for connections, relationships between chords that help explain their emotional impact. Fortunately, the model we're using can help with that, and it tells us what sorts of behaviors to expect from each different function, but we still need to examine why those behaviors are the ones that best tell our story. Like Don't Stop Believin' ends with a 4 chord going back to the 1 chord, which you might recognize as something called a plagal cadence. But one question we might want to ask is, why use a plagal cadence here? Well, a common common answer is that plagal cadences provide a weaker sense of rest than traditional 5-to-1 cadences, so they're often used to get a quick resolution without really disrupting the momentum of the piece. That's what functional harmony says anyway, but is that what's happening in this specific case? Only your ears can tell you that. Listen to the song. Seriously, the more you listen, the better your analysis will be. But yeah, that's what's happening here. Actually, I'd like to take a moment to emphasize something. In the end, these chords exist in service to a story, so understanding what they're doing depends on understanding what that story is, and the best source for that is usually the lyrics. You don't have to do a full lyrical analysis or anything, but you should at least know the general story because your listeners certainly will, and it colors their experience of the other aspects of the music. Like when I did the message in a bottle analysis, the idea that the verse never actually plays the one chord makes a whole lot more sense once you know the song is about a castaway who can't find his way home. Anyway, what do we do if our model can't explain something? Well, that's where it helps to have more than one model. The more different ways you have to think about harmony, the more tools you'll have in your analytical toolbox, and the more likely it is you'll find a useful explanation. This brings us to the central lesson of this whole video. Context is everything. We said Don't Stop Believin' was in E major, but what happens if they suddenly play a G major triad? I can think of about 4 or 5 different explanations for that chord, but really we don't have enough information yet to know which one is correct. Fortunately, each interpretation comes with its own predictions for how the chord behaves, so we can look at what's going on around it to see which one is the most likely, or if we can't get it from that, we can, again, just go listen to the song. And as for how to learn these new models, well, I made a whole video about non-functional techniques, so you can go watch that to get started, but the real trick is to just practice analyzing. It's a skill, and you have to train it, so take songs, break them apart, and see what you can come up with. For each chord, ask what is this doing in the key, and what is it doing with the chords around it. If something doesn't make sense, just take your best guess and move on. You can always come back to it later. If you're really confused, try looking at how the individual notes move between the chords. That's usually a pretty good indicator of their harmonic relationship. Over time, you'll start to pick up patterns, and noticing patterns in songs is basically what music theory is. You can also ask for help. There's lots of theorists out there, and we love talking about analytical models. It's what makes us so much fun at parties. Analytical context can even change the labels we put on things. Like, let's go back to one of our first analysis videos, Stairway to Heaven. The chords in the intro are mostly easy to identify, but the second one's a bit tricky. Check it out. The notes here from bottom to top are G sharp, C, E, and B. So what is it? Well, the chord that most comfortably contains all 4 of those notes is C augmented major 7, but in context I don't think it's behaving like an augmented chord. In cases like this, I like to ask myself, which chords does this kinda look like, and which of those would make the most sense here? I wound up ignoring the C and calling it E major, but some commenters argued it was better viewed as A minor major 7, just voiced without an A. Honestly, both of those seem like reasonable answers, which brings me to my final point. Music theory isn't Sudoku. There can be more than one right answer. Analysis isn't just trying to score all the points by putting the right labels on the things, it's about exploring and explaining the fundamentally subjective experience of listening to a piece of music. When I analyze a song, I may say things you disagree with, and that's great. That means you're thinking about the music at a deep enough level to know when something I say feels wrong to you, and I'm always interested in hearing alternate theories about the songs I analyze. But just because one of us is right doesn't mean the other one's wrong. That's not how music works. If you're interested in learning more ways to think about music, I'd recommend this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform with over 20,000 lessons in just about everything. I've recently been watching through a course about writing music for TV ads, which is a whole different world from the kinds of composition I'm used to. There's all sorts of challenges I'd never even thought of, and I've been enjoying learning how the people who do that work solve them. The course is called Introduction to Music Composition for TV Commercials if you want to check it out. Skillshare also has plenty of other courses, both musical and not, and they're offering 2 free months of premium membership to the first 500 12-tone viewers to click the link in the description. It's totally risk-free, and if you want to keep going, premium plans start at less than $9 a month, so why not give it a try? And hey, thanks for watching, and thanks to our Patreon patrons for supporting us and making these videos possible. If you want to help out and get some sweet perks like sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, there's a link to our Patreon on screen now. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes, like, share, comment, subscribe, and above all, keep on rockin'.